would be looking towards maybe doing.
Interesting, because actually Infused aren't the type of team that will ban just because they think someone's good at a champion. They have done it before. I mean, they used to ban Irelia almost consistently against Tundra, but sometimes they may not value a champion over other champions and say, okay, well, Singed, I think we can actually deal with Singed despite how good he is. Maybe we'd like to prioritize our bans elsewhere. So we may see Singed go through, but then again, Infused are a very smart team, and they obviously Chunky will be relaying whether he thinks he can deal with that Singed, and then may likely even see that Singed ban coming through. If it doesn't go through, Prince Philip may not even want to pick it, because obviously when you have a Singed, it kind of limits the options that your team can run with for a total team competition. Sometimes that top lane pick is really pivotal.
Yeah, that is very true. One other thing that I think we should probably touch on here, just in case the viewers aren't aware, Devine are actually playing with the substitute today. Instead of Dan, who used to be on Infused, interestingly enough, they're playing with Nemesis in the jungle position. So that is going to change up maybe their strategy and the picks that they have open to them a little bit.
Yeah, and also Dan and Imberlight were both on Infused, and I think at least at one point Rafa may have even been on Infused. Infused has had a lot of people in the UK through its roster, so it's been a very popular organisation for aspiring pro players. So it's going to be a bit of a grudge match, especially as Imberlight will want to get a bit of an own back on his team that he didn't do, maybe not performed as well as he wanted to with Infused, and they let him go. But Singed, like I said, has not been banned. Infused often like to do this. They have trouble champions that they like to ban away. It used to be Irelia consistently. They probably aren't that worried about going up against the Singed. They probably think in their minds that actually we're probably fairly well equipped to deal with it, even if it does go through.
Yeah, I think, Chunky, he's obviously a great player, and I think he will have the tools at his disposal to deal with that. It's more down to, has Devine practiced any sort of special Singed strategies? Because obviously, we're talking about Prince Philip being this great Singed player. Well, that's a solo queue thing for him, mostly.
Yeah.
However, bringing that speciality to his team might have allowed them to come up with some kind of cheesier strategy that they can bring out when he gets Singed.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side, you've got to look at it in the aspect of because they were probably sure that people were going to ban Singed against him every time. Will they have prepared anything with the Singed? Would they have even bothered? They have just been looking towards other strategies, because actually practicing with the Singed may have almost 90% of the time been a complete waste of time. And we've seen him hovering over that Morgana. This is the way that Devine do like to pick up their game. They often pick picks that you won't have a total idea of where they're going to go on the map. And that's what we were talking about, the way we liked it. They don't give away too much in the early set of Champ Select. On the other side, Infused picking a very, very popular jungler straight off the bat, Vi going locked in for Dandy.
Yeah, and the Vi pickup's interesting, because it's certainly not something that you have to play in a specific team composition, but it is very good at those hard engage comps. So a little bit of something shown away there. Obviously, the Black Shield from Morgana is going to be excellent against her ultimate, but Infused, I would argue, showing a little bit more with that pickup. They can run Vi just as a strong champion, but really complementary in those big engage compositions.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be thinking that they're essentially waiting on the side of Devine to see what gets picked up in the top lane before they totally decide what Prince Philip is going to be playing. I feel like their tactics here are, we going to pick Morgana that we can move somewhere else. However, if a pick comes up for Chunky that Prince Philip is comfortable playing Singed into, then maybe he'll pick it up later in the Champ Select, and they can move Morgana down to that support role. And against a Braum, you'd expect that Morgana would be a fairly safe pickup in that bot lane, allowing your AD carry a little bit more room to breathe when dealing with the stun that obviously the Braum provides.
Yeah, that is very true. I mean, on the flip side, obviously the stand behind me skill plus the stun, or the shield rather, makes it very easy for the bottom lane of Infused to deal with the bindings. It looks like Devine are actually picking their support a little bit earlier than they normally do when it comes to their rotations. They're giving away that this Morgana pickup is definitely not going towards the bot lane at this point. I mean, unless they're going to run something surprising like Janna mid. We used to see that, not so much anymore.
No, not so much anymore. In fact, there was a chap in the Newell, when the Newell was second season, I believe, Go Fish, used to play Janna top lane quite effectively too, but I doubt that is going to be the case anymore. So Morgana likely going to be going with Prince Philip. We have seen him play it before. It could be moved to the mid lane if Imberlite would so wish, but I feel as if they pick a Singed now, they're seriously lacking a lot of burst damage, and that probably won't be the point of call for them. They've got a very heavy sort of shield protect comp here. They've got Janna, they've got Morgana. I just got to wait for that last pick to have a complete rounded idea. However, we just got a very strong pick coming here from the Infused lineup. They've got a very, very classically strong bot lane. The Light Slinger with the Brown stun makes for a very quick stun, to be honest. And obviously, Wawa now picking up the mid laner likely. And that's going to be, wow. I mean, probably going to be Fizz top, Victor mid. I mean, I can't say that I've never seen a Vi go top lane, because it has happened once or twice. But it's likely going to be Chunky playing that Fizz top lane. And he is very, very good on that, isn't he, Siglis?
Yeah, he is. And, it's certainly one of those picks that recently has really come to light as being very strong. I do think that if Prince Philip is taking this Morgana in the top lane, that's actually a pretty interesting matchup. It's very hard to actually stick any damage onto that Fizz pickup.
Whoa.
Bard...
Whoa.
I was under the impression Bard was banned.
No,
maybe that's a proxy pick.
It's a proxy pick, yeah. So Bard is Xerath.
Okay, and actually that's pretty cool, because basically what I was going to say was I think the way Devine should round out their composition is with a Xerath. It provides them something to protect other than the Caitlyn, and the rest of their composition is very protect heavy, so that makes a lot of sense to me. The only risk here is that in the middle lane, it's going to be hard for Xerath to deal with the Vi ganks early on, especially around the time that Vi hits level 6. That's traditionally kind of a jungler that you pick up into a Xerath, just because Xerath is so immobile.
Yeah, I mean, they needed to pick something like a Xerath, otherwise their team composition was just going to fall flat on its face towards the later stages of the game. They just wouldn't have had any damage. So picking that Xerath was a decent pickup for them, because it allows them to scale a little bit better into that late game. You've got to give the overall scaling over to Infused, however. They just have a very hard-hitting team composition. They actually had an interesting lineup. It was very much a sort of a one-bomb, pick-off one-person lineup. And then they picked Victor, kind of just threw a spanner in the works in what I thought the entire team composition was aiming to do. I imagine they're going to have Dandy and Chunky going straight in, trying to take out the targets that they want. They're going to have Wawa and Toaster in the backline just doing their thing. Obviously, Wawa can either peel or he can go aggressive, looking to get a stun down on a key target. And then the Victor kind of sits here, and I'm trying to figure out what the Victor's role is in this team fight, as opposed to just maybe throw some AoE damage down, maybe throw a gravity field to try and control the team fight. Doesn't seem like it totally fits with the rest of the Infused lineup.
Yeah, it is a little bit of an odd pickup, to be honest, especially into what had already been seen from Devine. At that point, everything but the Xerath was known, right? So how is Victor going to make an impact against, the Morgana, who's got the black shield, great against Victor, also the Janna, Victor is relatively short range for an AP carry until he gets the ultimate down and starts moving in a way, but in order to have that effectiveness from that ability, he has to move close first, and he's just not going to be able to get there very safely against the composition that Devine are running. So it's a weird pickup, and I agree with you. I don't feel like it necessarily fits in that well.
Yeah, I mean, the only couple of things that I can think of that makes Victor viable here is he can hold his own versus Xerath for wave clear pretty easily at level 9. And also, maybe they're going to be looking towards more of a split push composition. They're going to put Fizz away from the rest of the team. Not many champions, especially Morgana, can 1v1 a Fizz lane in the late game. That's just not going to happen. And then they just have a very sort of classical team fight composition here with the Vi, the Victor, the Lucian. They're just going to try and do as much damage as they physically can, and also look to try and disengage with the Brown ultimate. That's probably maybe what they're looking for, but I imagine that the Victor pickup was just to allow for a little bit of wave clear, because if they don't have the Victor, they don't have much wave clear.
Yeah, I mean, there are alternatives they could have gone for, but to be honest, most of the big wave clear champions in the mid lane aren't being picked up at the moment, / were banned out. Like the Lysandre, for example, pretty good at clearing waves. It was banned out. Morgana picked on Devine. You got Xerath picked on Devine. You're looking at maybe something like a Ziggs would have been one of the other options, but the problem is that Ziggs isn't as strong as he used to be. It's kind of more a pocket pick for certain players who are really comfortable on him. So I agree there's a small niche in the composition that the Victor does fill. But given how strong the team fights are from Devine, if Chunky, for example, doesn't get to the point where he can split push properly, then what do Infused do when it comes to a full-on 5 versus 5? How are they going to compete with the massive strength that the composition from Devine is bringing?
In my opinion, I feel like Devine need to get ahead in this early phase, though. Otherwise, they're just going to struggle really, really hard. The thing is about Lee Sin, he's fantastic, and especially when he gets a bit of an early lead, he starts to do some real damage. But going up against Divide, you're just not going to scale in terms of utility unless you can consistently pull off really, really flashy plays with those insects or even the flash animation kicks. It's going to be more and more difficult for him to have as much of a role as apart from being a peel bot in the later game. Obviously, just using that Tempest and Cripple and Kick to just peel for whoever you're aiming to peel for. Caitlyn also needs to get ahead. She needs to be that lane bully. She needs to get items behind her so she starts doing some real damage, because she also, apart from her positioning advantage, having that long range, doesn't scale as well as most other AD carries. The headshot's really fantastic when you get the more attack speed, but everything else in her kit isn't as hard scaling as Lucian's kit. She only has that positional advantage, which is going to help her, but I wouldn't say it's going to help her enough versus the dive composition that you're going to have to be facing face to face with a Vi ultimate and a Fizz ultimate, basically going to be almost focusing you or Xerath. And both of those guys, although they are long range carries, they both need to be very careful in this composition. They do have the Morgana Black Shield, obviously, but that's only going to last so much, and also with some clever timing can also be completely circumnavigated too. So I personally feel Devine need to get the ball rolling, continue to throw that ball straight into Infused's face, and then look to snowball and take advantage of their superior team fights.
Yeah, if they don't get ahead too early, it is going to be difficult because they're lacking damage from some of the other sources. I mean, Caitlyn and Xerath are basically the primary damage threats here. Prince Philip on Morgana does do damage, but it's very position-based. If you're not in the Tormented Soil, well, that's a large part of that damage gone away. Whereas if you look over the composition coming out of Infused, Toaster is going to be doing lots of damage. Ulfr is going to be doing lots of damage. To be honest, Dandy is going to be doing a lot of damage as well. Vi is one of the most damaging junglers out there, especially in the early and mid game. And then Chunky, obviously, with the 20% damage boost whenever someone is hit by or tagged by Chum the Waters, is going to be hitting very, very hard. So they've got a good front line, potentially, or rather, they've got a good ability to disengage. But they are lacking a little bit of damage on Divine's side, and it's going to be hard for them if they don't get ahead early. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, they do have the potential with the Lee Sin to put in some really strong early ganks. Vi doesn't quite have the same impact Lee Sin can have in the early game. Vi, if she gets a good Vault Breaker, will be really devastating. A fully charged Vault Breaker almost instantaneously wins you a gank. And also, she's probably one of the best counter junglers out there, for counter ganking rather, the best counter gankers, because she can just charge up and come in at the right time with that Vault Breaker. But Lee Sin does have the potential to be a little bit more proactive in his ganks, has a little bit more mobility, can gank a little bit earlier. You're a fan of it too. You can even pull off a level 2 gank with quite considerable ease. So we'll have to just see what Devine choose to make use of when Nemesis is trying to roam around. Pings coming out all over the place. Everyone's stacked up on the side of Devine, spread out on the side of Infused. Actually just looks like going to be a very stable start.
Yeah, I don't think either of these teams have the best capability going for an invade. Certainly if they were to stack and repel an invade, they do. Things like Janus Howling Gale and the Binding are great in that kind of a scenario, but without a little bit more hard CC or significant level 1 burst damage, neither of these teams looking to pick too much of a fight.
No, and actually just very defensive here from Devine, and them potentially expecting a deep ward coming out from Infused, but again, we're not seeing too much happening here. Some nice warding on the red side jungle here for Devine. They've got that all covered up. Does look like Lee Sin will be starting at the Gromp. That's where he's focusing most of his attention right now. And again, Infused just running this big, long spread of champions, making sure that no one gets access to the jungle. Devine not opting for any deep wards, and you can see Infused have pushed their ward line quite far up, and you can see it's just poking into the jungle side of the Devine lineup. But the Devine, very, very defensive, and actually Lee Sin moving up towards starting this red side.
Yeah, it's interesting that Nemesis is deciding to do this. Obviously, with the defensive wards that they put down in the red jungle, maybe they were kind of expecting either an invade or just sort of poking in to put some wards down. But because they know that Infused aren't aware of where Lee Sin is starting, swapping it out and going for this red buff start is actually kind of a cool mind game, and we were talking about it yesterday. So what some junglers have started doing is leaving that blue buff for a significant amount of time to throw off the timing of the other team. You know, they aren't aware of when it's actually going to respawn.
And it's actually a very solid tactic, and it does mean you kind of shut down the 7-minute counter jungling areas, and especially since a lot of teams will be starting to become more and more used to that, you may even see less of this 7-minute aggressive counter jungling, because it has become fairly popular since this IEM, and people have started doing it more and more, all from being fairly aggressive in that mid lane. It's one of the only champions, I think, that can go toe-to-toe with Xerath in terms of range in the early game, using that Death Ray just to have a similar...
Oh, bot lane, hang on, Ignite going down onto Neza, the level 2 being hit early by Infused, really letting them put some pressure down.
Yeah, that was very aggressive. The Piercing Light right there, just doing its work also, and then looks like Wawa and Toaster have got the overall advantage in this lane so far, and Nizar has to be very careful. Aggressive moves from Toaster here, but the nice Janna shield. Oh my word, he's taking those piercing lights all day right now, and he doesn't have a pot to back him up. He has to be so careful at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the good news for Neza is that because he's playing Caitlyn, he's got the range to CS from quite a distance. The problem is that we've still got flash from Toaster, so if he mispositions, the burst could definitely come down. There's a heal on Neza. At the very least, he didn't burn that in that initial exchange, but certainly the bot lane so far is looking like it's going towards Infused.
Yeah, Rafa has to be so quick with those shields if he wants to keep Nizar from suffering too much damage. And actually, it looks like Lee Sin is definitely doing that. Delayed blue buff at this point. Blue buff may be spawning around the 8-minute 20 mark as opposed to an early 7-minute. He's actually going straight for it though, so we'll be taking that off the field fairly quickly. I think looks like Dandy is either going to be going towards that blue buff, knowing Lee Sin may be doing it now, or he's just going to take just going to take the Scuttle Crab.
Taking the Scuttle Crab here is a really nice play, I think, given how pushed Infused spot lane is and how strong early ganks from Lee Sin would be. This is really providing some additional cover for the bot lane of Infused.
Oh,
also,
Dandy.
Looking like he wants to come in for a gank, but is reacting with a quick 90 caliber net to get out of there.
Yeah, I mean, he could have flashed Vault Breaker, and that would have spelled the end for Neza. He does have heal, but doesn't have flash. I think even with heal, he would have been hard-pressed to survive from that. He's still managing to stick around in lane though, doing a pretty good job. And actually, Dandy, he's saying he might even flash over the wall here.
Oh, he did it! He's coming in. Here comes the Vault Breaker. None of the CC landing on Nizar. The heal goes down. I think he's gonna get away from this, to be honest, and actually turn around, putting some poke down as Infused backs off. Really nice survival there from Nizar, but he's got to be careful. He now does not have heal or flash.
Yeah, very lucky for him to survive that. Actually, a nice bit of maneuvering, which saved his 90 caliber there until he was completely in position. A nice use of the brush as well to make sure he just denied vision for that split second, allowing him to just get away. That was a bit of an aggressive move by Dandy. I almost feel like he was trying too hard to get the damage down onto Neza, but it has allowed the Infused bot lane a little bit of extra time. They've got a serious CS lead at this point in time too, and they're looking like they're going to try and push this up to the turret. Don't think they're going to quite manage it, however. I think Neza will be back in time.
Yeah, it's interesting, to be honest. Normally when you see a Caitlyn pickup, you're expecting that pick to kind of dominate lane, but this has gone completely the opposite direction. That said, with the early back picking up this pickaxe now, Toaster really needs to back up and get some items, or Nizak could start finding himself in a position where he can actually fight the bot lane of Infused.
Yeah, Rafa just delaying the back ever so slightly there, and actually, I mean, they're going to have to back off all the way there. And it means that they may even lose a couple of minions to turret. So nice play by Rafa, really keeping this bot lane alive and kicking for Devine. They're going to be having a pretty decent time of it now. I think that's a pickaxe and an extra Doran's picked up for Lucian. And considering how badly the early lane went there, not too bad of a turnout for the Devine bot lane. They're going to immediately react to the backing of the Infused bot lane and try and take this dragon off the map.
That would be a really nice pickup for Devine, to be honest. They are so far behind in the bot lane that if they don't grab this now, you know, they're really going to fall even further behind. That said, the push coming out of the Caitlyn Janet did let them catch up nicely in CS, which is quite good for them. And obviously the dragon going down, a great pickup for them as well.
Oh, Prince Philip again, he's actually quite often caught out in this position, pushing up, may get caught out by Dandy coming from the
back. Here he comes. Prince Philip does have the soul shackles, but he's taken so low, actually has to flash away before they even proc onto their targets, but he's going to live, so he's not too unhappy with that.
Yeah, I mean, this happened last time for Devine. Prince Philip was consistently pushed up at this Morgana. As you do with the Tormented Soul, you would expect Morgana to be pushing fairly heavily against a Fizz. And he got caught out a couple of times by the opposing Ascendance jungler. It didn't obviously spell too much disaster for the team because they ended up winning the game, but it definitely meant that Prince Philip was behind for a significant proportion of the game. Really struggled for a while until he got his farm up to get those key items, but has burnt his flash now. And hopefully he'll be a little bit more defensive. He'll play a little bit more, you know, sensibly with his warding.
Yeah, we do see Nemesis actually looking like he wants to make something happen in this bot lane. With Bard leaving, if he can get onto Toaster, it's a good opportunity. But with heal and flash still being available for Toaster, I don't see any easy way for Nemesis to make that happen. Now Nemesis and Roth are just kind of roaming around doing something else.
Yeah, and right now Nizar is definitely struggling in this bot lane. Has got a lot of mana left though, has got a lot of escape potential. Heal is not quite off cooldown, but will be fairly soon, which will keep him in a very, very safe position. Wawa gets caught up by a trap, unfortunately not followed.
Oh, top lane! Chum the Water's going down. Look at how much damage that went straight onto Prince Philip. First blood getting picked up by Chunky. Nice pickup for Infused.
Yeah, Chunky, really nice start. You don't really want to be giving Fizz the advantages like that, especially as a Morgana. You're just going to consistently be, well, essentially having fish thrown in your face every couple of seconds. And considering this Fizz is likely going the auto-attack based on hit Fizz, not going to be getting too much by going any early magic resist. Obviously, there's a lot of magic damage that comes out, but you've got to really deal with the hybrid damage of that champion to really get the most effectiveness. And Prince Philip going to have to be a little bit more careful as we go on.
Yeah, that is very true. And now that he's fallen behind by that kill as well, things are only going to get more and more difficult for Prince Philip. Chunky picking up the components for that Phage now is also, as soon as he picks it up, going to be able to go in with the Sheen proc, but then get out of any return damage very quickly with that Sheen or that Phage speed up boost. Flash
wow.
Oh, the Culling's coming out as well. Doesn't quite pick up the kill. Rafa doing a good exhaust. Toaster gets that ability blocked out by Nezah. Actually, Wawa taking a lot of tower shots here as well. That was very close to going the way of Infused, but not quite.
Yeah, I mean, that was incredibly good play there from both Nizar and from Rafa to keep themselves alive. But again, Wawa almost secured the kill there had it not been for the heal and the very, very clutch Janna shield at the end. It does look like Dandy wants to make something happen with his ultimate, but Lee Sin and Imberlight are there to try and return the favor if that does happen. Dandy is very, very, very aggressive. He's charging up the Vault Breaker.
Oh, here he goes, coming in, but he doesn't get onto it straight away. Great turnaround onto Nemesis in the back line. Prince Philip, he came to the mid lane, but Ulfred straight away popping up that ultimate. He goes down. We see Imberlight trying to run back towards that mid lane to pick up a kill, but can't do it. Toaster, he gets Nezah. Tons of action across the map, but Infused taking the cake here with 2 kills.
Yeah, and that was, again, Prince Philip struggling. He's really quite far behind at this point in time. Chunky's going to continuously do this. Now he has the advantage. Actually, Imberlight was down in the bot lane trying to get a bit of a counter gank off with the Lee Sin, but unfortunately had to go back towards that mid lane as there was a strong push from the Victor. And right now, Infused just turning the heat up, and Devine really not looking like they can cope.
Yeah, I mean, all of the lanes are losing at the moment, and that is not a good position to be in when we were talking about pre-game how Devine really need to do okay in the early game to set themselves up for later on. They don't have a composition that functions well from behind. They don't have the great damage. The only thing that they've got going for them, if they fall behind, is a good amount of CC to maybe get some picks. But aside from that, they're really looking like they're struggling.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, the Devine comp is always going to lose the longer this goes on, and they were really there to design to get the early lead, try and force these mid-game skirmishes and team fights around the objectives, and then look to capitalize from that. They have an opportunity in a minute in when basically their team comp may serve them, and they may get this next dragon with that little, without too much of a problem. Their team comp may come in and save them, but unfortunately, Nizar is getting caught out by Toaster here. Toaster's got the red buff.
This is a lot of damage, actually. Thankfully for Za, Rafa's coming in. Also, Nemesis, but a flash forward from Toaster Nemesis is actually going to pick up the kill now. Wawa is the focus, but Dandy, he's here to back him up. Doesn't actually land the Q, however, and a Monsoon from Rafa just making sure that that fight gets stopped in its tracks.
Still, you would probably trade a kill on your AD carry for the kill on the enemy jungler most hours of the day, and it does mean that the dragon is going to be delayed. Victor in the wrong position right here, gets caught by a Q. Comes down.
Nemesis, he's jumping in. Ulfrin does throw down the ultimate, but here comes the Rite of the Arcane by Imbolite. Ulfrin is so low. Jump forward to this ward with the safeguard, plus that resonating strike to finish things off. Nice job by Nemesis and Rafa to pick up that kill.
Is this going to mean there's going to be a dragon going over to Devine? They've got their AD carry moving down. Prince Philip has already made his way across the map. Chunky doesn't have his teleport. Unless this is going to be a steal from Dandy, there's a lot of work for Infused to do here to get this dragon.
This would be a really nice pickup by Devine if they can get it, having that dragon advantage when everything else is going so horribly wrong. They are going to pick it up, but even still, there's a 2.1k gold lead over onto Infused. So given that all of their characters scale really well with items, they all do a lot of damage. That gold lead, I think, probably means more at this early stage of the game than those two dragons.
Yeah, I would probably agree. There's a little bit of a gold, like a sort of, I guess, hidden gold behind the dragon buffs, but you can't really put a value on it. The AD and AP probably, equivalent to about 600 gold per person. The later the stage, it scales as the game goes on, but you can't really put a price on the tower damage that they've just picked up. So at this point, it's not going to be too much for them because they aren't actually getting to a position where they're putting much damage on towers. Later on, though, if they do manage to survive, if they do get a couple of team fights in their favor, it may become a little bit more useful because once you have the damage from the second dragon buff to the towers and buildings, making these mid-game team fights more and more valuable because they do immediately mean they can easily return objective, and it just looks like a little bit of a skirmish going in the bot lane. But once you have the extra damage, it means you can be more likely to pick up a tower objective after you get a good team fight.
That is very true, but at the moment, because all the lanes of Infused are doing so well, there are no openings for Devine to actually go for a push onto a tower. They really need to win a fight first, but they're not anywhere close to winning fights consistently. Toaster, though, hang on a second, taking a horrible trade, gets exhausted. The ultimate has to come down from Walla to keep him up, but now Nezad jumping in with that 90 caliber net. Great shield by Walla, keeping all of the damage off of his AD carry, though. Yeah,
really nicely played, and actually Nezad, a good job to just keep the lane in his favor at this point in time. It was definitely looking like the Toaster and Wawa were running away with it. Ulfrin does a lot of damage there to Nemesis, and he's actually losing his red buff in the process. I think he's going to get spied out by this pink ward as Dandy runs away with his prize. Dandy, not had enough though. Looks like he's going to try and catch out Nemesis.
Oh, if he goes for this, he actually does have a lot of damage right now. Gets kicked back during the ultimate and isn't able to follow up, though, so just trade an ultimate for ultimate there. Not honestly that bad for either of them, but with the red buff going over to Dandy, he certainly came out slightly on top.
Yeah, definitely. Dandy's going to be happy with that. He's burnt his ultimate, but it's a very similar cooldown to the Lee Sin ultimate. Lee Sin probably going to have it up a little bit before him, but you got to remember that the likelihood is that Infused won't be looking to utilize that ultimate for a good another minute and a half, at which point it will definitely be back off cooldown. But like we said, Devine now needs to look for these mid-game team fights, take advantage of the fact that their composition spikes a little bit earlier than the Infused lineup, and then maybe look to take objectives from that. Obviously, it's unlikely that they're going to be able to get easily pushed objectives without winning a fight. You've got to go against the wave clear of Victor. You've got to go against Fizz, in which Prince Philip is just really struggling by himself. The only lane that's going to get significant damage by itself will be this bot lane. They are looking like they may even take this turret away, which would be a huge bonus for the gold for the Devine side.
Yeah, they really need to start picking up some towers, actually. And Wawa coming in to try and defend it at the last second, doesn't realize Nemesis is here, and now he's in a 2 versus 3 situation. Nemesis is taking a lot of damage, though. Wawa gets monsooned back by Rafa, and they pick up that kill. Toaster, he's on the hunt, though. Cullen coming out, not going to quite be in range to keep the damage up, and Divine's bottom lane getting out of there.
Yeah, and Ulfrin just going to... oh, I take a lot of damage here from Imberlite.
Oh, top lane as well. Prince Philip, look at the damage that Chunky did. Earth just destroying him, and now Nemesis jumping onto Ulfrin. He's going to pick up that kill as well. Rafa trying to get the slow onto Dandy, but I think that is probably a fight he's not want to pick. He is very low health at the moment.
There's a real problem for Devine in this point, and it's in that top side of the map. No one can 1v1 a Fizz, especially on hit Fizz, once they get the item.
Uh-oh, Nemesis, he's caught out here. The damage, oh, fail flash by Toaster. He misses a very easy kill over onto Nemesis, and burns that huge cooldown as well. Meanwhile, Nezha just doing a good push in the mid lane.
This is just a real problem for Devine right now, and it is that Fizz. I've said it before, I was just talking about it a second ago, it's going to be so difficult for Prince Philip to become useful anytime soon. Sure, he's got quite a bit of farm under his belt, but he's significantly behind in both farm and in items compared to this Fizz. He'll never be in a stage where he can safely 1v1, even under a turret may be difficult for him, because the Playful Trickster means that Fizz can just negate the stun from the Morgana's Soul Shackles, and Prince Philip at this moment is just the weak link for the Divine side at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he is, like the links in his Soul Shackles, he is not very strong.
Oh, he's probably going to suffer that now as well.
Alright, Chunky, he's coming in. The Binding misses. That is going to probably be Prince Philip dead, to be honest. Chunky's damage is just ridiculous. Prince Philip tries to flash away. Look at the Chum the Waters damage. Wawa coming up just to secure it. Case, but doesn't even get the assist. Ulfrin does need to be a little bit careful in this mid lane. He's pushed fairly far up, but look at the damage on that laser onto Rafa. Nemesis does land that Sonic Strike, coming in with the resonating strike, and now Toaster, he is here to back him up. Here comes the ultimate, ace in the hole, not able to kill him. Imbolite, he's the next target. Chunky is coming from the sides, and that is going to be a great fight for Infused.
Yeah, and they'll be happy with that every day of the week. Right now, the saving grace, everyone in Infused isn't doing badly, but Chunky is doing incredibly well. He is going to be the absolute pivotal point in every single team fight, and Nezha is out here.
He is able to just get out of that situation. A few more auto attacks would have spelled his doom. Binding missing again from Prince Philip, not able to get onto Ulfrin. And to be honest, Excalibur, this looks like it could be the inhibitor tower going down. It is, in fact, now dead, and Dragon is going to be where Infused choose to spend their time now.
Yeah, this will be the first Dragon for Infused, and that's a very, very big Dragon buff for a team that's already ahead. That AD and AP is just going to be really, really crushing for the Divine side, especially on Chunky, who's going to benefit from both of those stats in every single way. So it's going to be more and more difficult now for Devine to get back into this. We said this, if Devine did not get ahead early, they probably were going to lose the game. And really, Infused are just showing us exactly why they are one of the best teams in the UK, because they had a team composition that was not good at team fights, but all of their laners have just outshone their opposition in almost every way at this point.
And because of how well they did in lane, they actually hit their power spikes item-wise earlier than Devine. So even though Devine power spikes earlier on paper, they just couldn't pull it off. You know, the Triforce coming down on Chunky very early this game, as well as that Infinity Edge on Toaster. The Infinity Edge came down on Toaster when Nezha only had a pickaxe and a BF sword, didn't even have that Cloak of Agility. They are so far ahead and have been so far ahead for pretty much the entire duration of this game. Devine need to start thinking about what's going to happen in Game 2. Even if they come back this game, they probably don't want to risk having such a weak early game next time around.
They're just going to go ahead and take away this other second red buff from the Divine lineup. Divine don't have a clue what's going on. You've got to look at the wards for Divine. They're very centered around this mid lane and trying to keep that mid lane push safe. They have no idea what's going on in their own jungle at this point in time. It's been completely cleared by the Infused roster. And what a fantastic place to stack up when there is no vision. They're going to be getting Chunky to put the pressure on this top lane turret. Divine very, 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 very sensibly taking the long way around here, but it does mean they lose time when getting towards that tower.
And also, with the fact that they're all moving up to this top lane to defend, the mid lane inhibitor's open. We might actually see Infused go for that. They are making a beeline straight for it. There's no way Divine are going to be able to get here in time to position appropriately. If they want to go in, they just gotta go now.
And even if they do get here, do they want to fight at this point in time? They need to get in, but like to get some damage down before they do it.
Oh, Prince Philip! He throws the shackles down, but it only lands on the chunky. Dandy actually taken very low in the backline while blocking that ace in the hole, stopping him from going down. But look at the damage coming in from Ulfrin. He managed to navigate to that backline, but he falls to Neza. Meanwhile, Toaster and Chunky, they're taking down this inhibitor. And to be honest, I think they're happy with that. Chunky, he might die to Neza here. He actually survives. Can Rafa get out of here? Bad flash doesn't get over the wall. Chunky and Toaster, they're running for their lives from Prince Philip, but actually trying to turn back around there. Playful Trickster not able to get enough distance onto Prince Philip, but really solid play from Infused. That fight had moments where it looked like Devine could come back. They just didn't manage to pull through.
Yeah, if Nizar had been just a little bit further back, a little bit further away from Chunky, he may have had the option to circumnavigate the Chum the Waters, try and use that caliber next to keep himself safe, and then try and get the hits in from the backline. He had used that ultimate previously, trying to take out a very low Dandy, but unfortunately there was a multitude of bodies in his way from the Infused side. But still, a pretty decent turnaround and a pretty... You know, they picked up some scraps. They picked up a shutdown onto Nizar. That's always going to be useful. They, you know, there are still ways in which they can at least try and come back. But I feel like it's almost just losing the. You know, the grasp is just being lost here on this game. Infused are fully in control. As Rafa, you need to be careful, buddy.
Oh, the damage from Ulfrin is pretty significant. Wawa now coming in as well, does get hit by the binding. Prince Philip doing a good job of getting them off of his teammates' back, but. You know, look at how much damage Prince Philip took, and he still hasn't been back. This is an opportunity for Infused, maybe to try and find something.
Yeah, they could even look to go and get some control over that Baron, but look at all of the wards that have been dedicated to that area. I think Infused is saying, we don't actually need to go for Baron at this point. We can easily take these turrets, we can just continuously rotate. No one can 1v1 Chunky at this point. So why would we even bother trying to risk the game by going for Baron? Let's just take these turrets. Let's just take advantage of the fact that Chunky is absolute monster at this point. And that just seems to be what they're doing. If anyone's interested in the Choke vs FM game, there is a slight update, but we'll get to it after this team fight potentially.
Prince Philip teleporting in, but actually gets stunned up by the gravity field straight away. He has got to get the heck out of there. Ultimate coming down from Ulfrin, doing some pretty good damage. And at this point, I feel like Devine probably need to concede this tower. It is going to be going down soon. Everyone is already very poked. If they don't concede this tower, they are at the very least going to be losing the top tower, and maybe a fight thereafter, given that Chunky has the teleport. The Cullen coming out. Prince Philip, he's taking a lot of damage. Soul Shackles only onto Ulfrin. Dandy, he gets the ultimate onto Nemesis in the backline. Wow, a great ultimate from him, knocking up most of Devine's team. And Toaster not quite able to pick up the Cullen to Imbolite. Chunky trying to jump on there to finish it up, but not able to do so. And this tower, yeah, it's going down.
Yeah, I mean... They were very aggressive, 4 versus 5. Unfortunately, Prince Philip again caught out of position. He's not had a good game on that Morgana this time round. Really been struggling to make his impact heard, or impact felt rather. Sorry, I'm just going to get onto the Choke versus FM. FM are currently 3k gold ahead at this point, at the last update that I received. So they look like they had the upper hand versus Choke. So we could see what some would maybe describe as an upset from the favourites in that game there.
Yeah, that is fairly interesting. Obviously, we talked about FM being a great team, you know, since their inception many years ago, or however long it's been, but Choke have been on top recently. You know, if they were to lose out on this, we should probably explain a little bit more about how the tournament format works. Some people might not be aware. Whoever wins this game, and whoever wins the game between FM and Choke, automatically qualify for the event at the end of the ESL Premiership. They are just playing for seeds at that point, so who's going to be first seed and second seed. Choke, if they lose, or FM will have other opportunities, same for Infused and Devine.
Yeah, Ulfrin being aggressive there with a flash and ultimate. I don't think he realized, didn't think he thought he was going to get a kill, but was definitely just a display of power from that Victor in the mid lane, wanting to go a little bit aggressive. He has got that Rabadons, he's got the second upgrade of his Hex Core, and is now looking like he's working towards a, I would assume, going to be a, what the hell is it called, Abyssal Scepter, but hasn't quite finished that one up yet.
Yeah, I mean, he needs to pick that up kind of soon, I think. He is taking a lot of damage at the moment from the multitude of magic dealing members of Infused, so picking that up would be a very good pickup for him. Similarly, it looks like Ulfrin's going for that Abyssal Scepter. That would be nice against pretty much the main damage threat being Imbolite at the moment. You know, Neza is struggling to deal with the huge dive composition out of Infused, so he's not really putting out that many numbers onto Ulfrin.
Even Imbolite hasn't picked up his Rabadons at this point. He's not too much of a threat. In fact, I can't seriously say that anybody on the Devine side is a huge threat to the Infused lineup at this point. Infused probably just going to rotate round for this mid lane inhibitor. No mana really on Ulfrin. He needs to be careful. He steps right into a trap there. He's taking the long way round this mid lane inhibitor. And actually, Infused need to be careful if they're thinking about going for this.
I actually think Infused probably shouldn't go for this inhibitor just right yet. Ulfrin not having mana is a very big deal. He's one of the major components of their team fight. You know, when we look at Devine, we talked about this before, they have a team fight composition. That's what their whole team is designed to do. Whereas on the side of Infused, they don't have quite the same level of 5 versus 5. Ulfrin offers a lot of that. Without mana, he's not going to be providing the same amount of utility to his team. So I would suggest that Infused do what they're doing now, go back, get the mana, then make their push.
Yeah, they've got a big gold lead. They don't need to be too worried about the Devine side catching up if they're not keeping the pressure on. They're just so far ahead at this point. They could practically stall the game out another 10 minutes and still be in a perfectly acceptable position. So it does look like Baron is potentially the next point of call for the Infused lineup. This is the point in the game where they're struggling to get past the massive wave clear from the Xerath, maybe thinking a little bit more around going for a big objective that will allow them to push more easily with those ridiculously powerful Baron minions.
Yeah, picking up the Baron here would be very good. The wave clear on the side of Devine at the moment is very strong. You know, you've got the Xerath who can pretty much one-shot waves even at this later stage in the game. But when they are Baroned up, that becomes very difficult. That was actually really close to a steal from Imbolite, but now he does not have Rite of the Arcane available. That is going to be a big deal in this upcoming fight.
Yeah, it could very well be a big deal in the upcoming fight. He may not want to be static as long as the ultimate allows him to be static for, so he may actually be a saving grace that he won't have to use it in this next team fight. But ideally, he wants to be getting damage off before these team fights even take place, because that's really the only way that Devine have a chance when it comes to fighting against the Infused lineup at this point. They need to make use of the fact that Xerath can do a lot of damage before these team fights even start. Ulfrin, again, moving away from the team, actually himself looking to be the split-pushing presence. He's got a lot of wave clear. He can do this very, very quickly. Infused just towing around the edges of the Devine lineup at this point. They know there's no quick way for Ulfrin to make his way to them, so he's just going to be a little bit more careful until they've got a big wave pushed up in the spot lane.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it makes more sense for Ulfrin to do the split push, especially with the Baron buff.
Oh, yeah.
Chunky doesn't really push waves very quickly, and he's an important component of the fights as well. Prince Philip!
Oh, Prince Philip!
Look at that damage! He's got to get out of there, and that just opens the floodgates. Infused running straight onto that inhibitor now that they're in a 4 versus 5, or rather 5 versus 4 position. Bot lane, probably going to be the next objective they go for here. Prince Philip does have those home guard boots, comes straight out of the base, actually lands a big binding onto Wawa. The Rite of the Arcane comes down as well. Wawa is very low. Chunky gets knocked into the rest of the team, but the tower falls meanwhile, and Prince Philip trying to 1 versus 1 Toaster, not going to pull that off. Chunky coming in, instantly pops one person, and Toaster, he is full health. Ulfrin was full health until he just took a lot of poke. He actually nearly goes down. Neza flashes into a gravity field. That is not a good idea. Toaster picks up the quadra kill. That is going to be game 1 going over to Infused.
I mean, what else can you really say about this game? Devine needed to get ahead, and they just didn't. They just lost in every sense and every possibility. Nizar was a redeeming factor, and so was Nemesis, but Nemesis didn't have as much of an impact across the map as he potentially would have liked, and I've got to sort of question the Morgana pickup for Prince Philip, especially when he hadn't seen who he was potentially going up against. Once they'd locked in that Fizz, they had the option to move Morgana into another role, maybe even going to that mid lane. That wouldn't have been awful against Ulfrin. At least you can push against the Victor, but you know that you're going to struggle against a Fizz. You can push him in, fair enough, that's great, but once he gets pressure from Dandy, he was always going to win that matchup, especially in a 1v1 scenario. Prince Philip just needs to think a little bit more about going up against Chunky, because he needs to take something that he's very comfortable on, and needs to take something that, more importantly, he can either go even or win lane with.
Yeah, that is very true. I'm going to have to pass over to you for a second whilst I restart my computer. My League client is just a black box at the moment, so if I want to watch the next game, I got to restart.
No problem. We are going to take a short break now from this first game between Infused and Devine. As we get into the next lobby, it's going to be the second of this best-of-3 series, the second semi-final, the first one taking place between FM and Choke currently right now. I believe FM have a big advantage in that game, so we'll update you as soon as we know the score there, but hold on to your seats because Infused could run away with this semi-final in the next game. We'll be back in 5.